All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Can you hear me okay? Oh, great. My name is Gina Kim. I teach South and Southeast Asian art in the Department of History of Art and Architecture here at Harvard. And among many other hats I wear on this campus, I oversee the arts program at the Lakshmi Mittal and Family South Asia Institute. And it is in this role that I welcome you all to this evening's special event with the artist Atul Bhalla. So this evening's program is co-sponsored by the Mittal Institute and the History of Art and Architecture Department. And I'd like to thank the staff of the Mittal Institute, Salman Rafi, the project manager, Colin Carr, and of course, the executive director, Hitesh Hatti, and the director, Darwin Khanna, in particular, for making this event possible. Of course, the Mittal Institute's arts program is possible thanks to the Arts Advisory Council, chaired by Dr. Dipti Mathur, whose vision to promote South Asian art, especially modern and contemporary art of South Asia, has been the genuine catalyst for all South Asian art-related events and programmings on this campus, including the Visiting Artist Fellows program and the Distinguished Artist program. So this evening's program is also part of the Mittal Institute's new climate research initiative, which aims to foster research on climate data and adaptation in South Asia. You can learn more about it on the Mittal Institute's website. And I should also mention the support of the Harvard Radcliffe Institute that has helped us bring our artists to the campus. To do a plug-in here, one of Atul Bhalla's work in the Harvard Art Museum's collection is in the exhibition on climate change I curated titled Water Stories, River Goddesses, Ancestral Rights, and the Climate Crisis. And this is on view in the Johnson Kalukundis Gallery on Radcliffe campus. So it is my pleasure to introduce Atul Bhalla, Distinguished Climate Artist in Residence at the Mittal Institute this week. Atul Bhalla comes to us from Delhi, where he is professor and the head of the Department of Art, Media, Performance, School of Humanities, Social Sciences at Shiv Nadar University, Delhi. Bhalla earned his BFA from Delhi University and his MFA from the School of Art of Northern Illinois University. Bhalla is a conceptual artist working on environmental urgencies, particularly the everyday relationship between the Yamuna and her urban communities. Venerated in Hindu mythology as the goddess of life, the Yamuna has become one of the most polluted rivers, or if not the most polluted rivers in the world. Bhalla's sustained engagement with the Yamuna has resulted in public installations, photograph performances, and videos. And I must add that it is this body of work that in a way emboldened me to curate the Water Stories exhibition, because I knew we have two of Bhalla's work in our collection, and I Was Not Waving But Drowning too, a piece from 2005, acquired by the Harvard Art Museums in 2008. And there's another work from 2014, Adrift on Dvaipayana, by him, acquired by the museum, Harvard Art Museums in 2015. So this I Was Not Waving But Drowning was exhibited at the Harvard Art Museums in 2011. And this is probably the first work by the South Asian artist, contemporary artist, that was acquired by the Harvard Art Museums. And in celebration of which, there was a panel discussion with Jim Westcott, Sugata Bose, Deborah Martin Cow on March 2011. And I've been in touch with Jim Westcott, and he was talking about how he wasn't in the panel with this. And I knew about this event because Mittal Institute keeps good record of things. So this is actually director's letter when the Mittal Institute was South Asia Initiative from 2011. And you can see our director here, young Professor Darwin Khanna. And on page 8, you actually see the event that was co-sponsored by the South Asia Initiative when it was South Asia Initiative here. So, being an art historian, I have a historian knack for looking for things old. And so this is a newsletter. It's kind of a piece of history from South Asia Institute's past. And it's amazing that we actually have Atul here for the whole week. So So Atul Bhalla's work has been exhibited in international venues, including the Pompidou Center and Benton Museum of Art, Daji Museum in Mumbai, Bikaner House, Craft Contemporary, and I'm not going to read all the names because there are too many. I will and we'll also highlight he has also been included in group shows such as the Fukuoka Asian Art Triennial and New York Museums India, Public Places and Private Spaces. This was an exhibition in 2008. So there aren't too many modern contemporary South Asian art exhibitions that happened in this country until that point. 2008 exhibition was one of the first exhibitions of the modern contemporary South Asia and art in North America. So that's, again, another landmark that he was included in. And he's been, I think, in 2022-2023, Bhalla partnered with Coast Studios in New Delhi on their 28th Parallel North Expeditionary Weather Station research project, traversing and engaging with climate change through his practice from Gokulpur, Nepali border, to the Ranjitpur, Pakistani border. So, and I brought two of his publications, actually. One is the Yamuna Walk, and the other one is You Always Step into the Same River. So, and I think you will show some of this in your presentation, and you're welcome to browse through my copies. Don't take it, it's my copy. Anyways, so please welcome Atul Bhalla to the podium. Oops, sorry.
With this one or okay, that one. Okay. Maybe I can take this off and put this on later. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Gina, for a generous introduction. And thank you all for being here. And I would like to thank the Howard Radcliffe Center, the Lakshmi Mittal and Family South Asia Initiative, Howard University, and the Howard Art Museums for having me here and to allowing to show the work at Gina's exhibition, and Gina for having me in the show. And it's been wonderful here and wonderful to be back. I was, I think, here in 2000 when it was last exhibited, I think, one day. Okay, I'm just going to go through a few projects, and some of the projects were cursorily hinted at the panel. Some of you, I think, were at the panel on the 13th at the Howard Radcliffe Center. So I'm just going to go through some of them in a little more detail. I think they need to be explored that way and engaged in that fashion, because I want to bring out certain things. And it involves how mythology, water, substance, immersion at site, and anthropological explorations are all included within my work. Okay. My work has been an attempt to understand water, how I perceive it, feel it, eat it, drink it, wash in it, bathe in it, swim, wade, sink, or will drown in it. How I drench, soak, douse, moisten, quench, dilute, dampen, cleanse, or purify. How I excrete tears, sweat, or urine. How it falls, drops, floods, inundates, levels, boils, lashes, gushes, swells, and ripples. How it exists as fog, mist, cloud, steam, snow, sleet, rain, or puddle. How it contains or is contained. How it is dammed or bottled. This was a 2005 text that I had kind of been using ever since, and I still think that it's still important to read it out at the beginning of this thing, and I think it's still valid. You never step into the same river twice, because neither are you the same man, nor is it the same river. This is Heraclitus, and taking off on Heraclitus, I contend that you always step into the same river. A boat hangs halfway between where it should be and where it might go, suspended in midair, a moment before it may touch the water or not. It could also be a moment the boat ends its journeying and is liberated from its function, delivered, a moment of dilemma, a wooden boat midair awaiting its release, but which way? What happens if the boat touches the river? What happens when the river touches the city? But does the city even want to touch its river? The boat sprang out of my idiotic whim to get a boat made in Delhi, and the explorative journey resulting in an expansive ethnographic exploration of traditional boat-making techniques of the upper Ganga basin, staging a singular personal experience, the shared key characteristics of which is that it may have an immediate and instinctive interaction with the landscape to which water is central, researched and executed between 2012 and 13 for the Heritage Transport Museum, a private-public enterprise just outside of Delhi. The installation at the museum is called the Wake. This is at the Manesar, just outside Gurgaon, those of you who know Delhi. The Wake is an aftermath of a death, a vigil kept along the body of someone who has died, sometimes accompanied by ritual observances. Yamuna is now the most polluted rivers of the world. The river from which the city is totally disconnected. You can perhaps only see the river from the 6 odd flyovers or bridges that cross the river, and that through certain meshed barricades, like caged inhabitants looking onto an apparent riverscape. The curator, agreeing to my whim and trusting me with another of my attempts to immerse myself into navigating unfamiliar terrain. I'd never made a boat before, and I'm not a sculptor that way. Another attempt at interrogating the city through the trope of water. I started looking for boat makers along the ghats of the Yamuna. Delhi, incidentally, also has 25 ghats, which are not anymore in the public, imagination, hidden from the public view by a wall that had come up to protect Delhi from getting inundated after the Great Flood of 1978. And if I may, the flood of 2023 this year surpassed the flood of 1978 because this year the Yamuna crossed the danger mark thrice within the same monsoon, and the water actually went much beyond the embankment that was built, came up by 1983 to help keep water, to control the river, as they say. No one goes to the river to just sit or be by it, except the homeless and the small farmers, mostly Muslim. And the land belongs to the Chauhans and the Gujars, settled nomads who don't farm, but are essentially cow and buffalo herders. The Gujars rent out small tracts of flood basin land, technically still belonging to the village. These urban farmers, working with the contaminated river water, produce contaminated vegetables, which again feeds the urban slums which line the river and the drains. The only access to the river today is an access of death. The cremation grounds, like the Nigambodh Ghat, which is the Ghat number 25, or the Kutsia Ghat, where the ashes of the cremated are immersed into the still stinking polluted waters. The Muslim and Christian graveyards are also being within a kilometer of the same site. But the riverbank is where the cremation ground is situated. Mythically, the Yamuna is this younger sister of Yama. And it says that if you would bathe in the Yamuna, you would keep Yama away. But today, I think she contemplates her own very imminent death. After looking around the geographical confines of the territory of Delhi, I found one boat repairman who was repairing boat on one of the ghats of Delhi. I asked him that, where did he live? He said he comes from Gadganga or Gad Mukteshwar, which is about approximately exactly 108 kilometers from Delhi. This is the nearest that the Ganges is from Delhi, and it's become another one of those very religious places where a lot of people go to for religious rites on the Ganga. I asked him if he had ever made a boat. He said, yes, I've made a boat. So, and why don't you come to Gadganga and I'll show you. So next weekend I went to meet him. Naresh was his name, and asked him where was the boat that he had built. I met him on the ghat. He said, you have to give me my daily wages and I'll tell you what. So I said, okay, I'll give you your daily wages. So he said, he jumped in with me when we went down 70 kilometers downstream to a place called Ahar. Ahar is also a Gupta period archaeological site. And we went right through the reserved Sal forest to the open area where the boat in all its magnificence was parked there just after the Sal trees. And he said, we can take 5 dungars across in the boat. Dungar meaning 5 cattle, 5 buffalo you could take across the river. So it was a large boat, as you can see this thing. So, He initially agreed to work with me on the project to build the traditional Upper Ganges Basin boat on Yamuna in Delhi, but then admitted he didn't know how. His brother did. So we went to see his brother, who ran a grocery shop. Then his brother said, no, I can't help you guys from the city. You need just one boat. What do I do after? I can't let my clients all go from the grocery shop. Why don't you just take the bridge? Why? Nobody needs boats anymore. Right? So well, another reason for me to kind of engage with this kind of a boat was this boat, the boats from Calcutta, Kerala, even Gujarat and Varanasi are in the public imagination, but this Upper Ganges Basin boat is not. So when I had shown these pictures of these boats to people in Patna and also in Varanasi, they said they had never seen such a boat, right? Maybe their grandfathers had seen something, but they had never seen. So the effort to get such a boat made was even stronger. And I finally found a family of boat makers from the village Dhani, which is north of Gorakhpur on the banks of the river Rapti. At the time that I went, which was like 2011, it was one of the 2 villages in that area that still did not have electricity. I'll show you the images. Right. And there I got the father Subhash, his son Ram Bhuvan, and his and the child's uncle, who was just called Mamaji, came to Delhi to work with me for 2 months. They stayed with me and made the boats on the polluted river Yamuna. We worked together for 2 months sourcing materials, shisham wood and special long 12, 15 and 18 inches square nails, which was sourced from Dhani, the village itself. The boat was built without using any synthetic waterproofing, and they used the roots of the flame of the forest, the dhak tree, to fill in the cracks, and it would kind of, when it hit the water, the roots would kind of swell up and they would get the boat to be almost waterproof. Subhash had dropped out of the school and so had his son Ram Bhuvan, but Subhash was extremely accurate in his calculation of the amount of wood and the sizes and the thickness needed. I was really amazed at the calculation he did for setting the balance, angles and the curves of the boat, which was 35 feet long and 10 feet wide. Halfway along, I asked them to make an intervention in the boat by making an extra rudder. No, I wanted a rudder on each end, and that the boat would have 2 rudders on each side. They were horrified. How can a boat have 2 backsides? I said, well, they have to make at least a provision. So they said, okay, since you're paying us, we'll agree with you. We'll make the provision, right? And the museum had wanted a boat. This is the Heritage Transport Museum. that had to be taken directly for display to be installed at the museum as an object untouched by life and water. The boat makers and I insisted that the boat had to be taken to water, to the Yamuna, before it went to the museum for the sake of its well-being, for the sake of the boat makers and the craft's well-being, and the idea from the beginning had been to make a real boat. This took much convincing at the museum, but they finally agreed. After prayers to the four gods, the local village goddess, the whirlpool god, the river goddess, and Vishwakarma, the god for tools and labor, handprinting the boat with a mixture of rice paste and water, which had to be done by a woman, and in this case, Sushila, my Christian workmate, who eagerly joined in at this point to leave her mark on the boat. The boat was finally taken to the river, reaching the spot, and this is the same spot where I did the work. I was not waving but drowning, which is exhibited at the Harvard Radcliffe exhibition space. And I've engaged at the same site. This is also about engaging at the site or revisiting the site continuously to do a number of projects, as a lot of artists do. And in this case, this site is very, very potent for me. Reaching the spot and where I, Subhash, the boat maker said, Jamuna ji is not flowing, or the Yamuna is not flowing, the river is not flowing. He then immediately understood why I had wanted two rudders on each side. Just like the Jamuna here did not flow, so the boat with two rudders on either side would only go in circles. We christened the boat Yamini, the night very dark after the river. After some ceremonies on the bank and praying for the long life of the boat and the boatmen, while on water, Yamini was finally lowered in the dark waters of Jamuna at Wazirabad. We all went around in circles in the still waters of the Yamuna at Wazirabad in the new boat, which was quite a spectacle to the local farmers and villagers who had, as none had ever seen in their memories, seen such a crafted new boat on the river. I'll just go through the slides very quickly. This is the boat with two rudders. And that's Subhash, and then it says Ram Bhuvan. And this is Subhash again. This is Mamaji. And these are the tools. And this was how big the boat was. Yeah, the nails, and they almost look like as if stapled them praying to one of the gods. The nails again. And this is the root of the flame of the forest, which they would insert in the crevices that were left. And this is how they kind of stapled the boards. It was called a pataya nav. And them praying to the four gods with alcohol, if you noticed. And this is my maid's hands. And then to the water, to the ghat. This is the one of the rudders that is there. That's Mamaji with the rudder. And this is on the boat. Finally, this is the other side. And then finally. And again, the boat with two rudders. And then this is how it's hung at the Heritage Transport Museum. The cafe is underneath, as if, conceptually making an underwater cafe. It hangs there with mirror-clad beams and the reflections, the waves have images of people praying to or on life on the riverbanks. And this is, the canopy came up later when we were installing. And this, this is the rudder at the village. This is Dhani. And this is the grandfather, this is the father of Subhash, who said he had made a boat on the Indus. And I was talking to a gentleman the other day who said he had seen silver roads. And that's Jack Hawley, who sent me the image from the river Indus. And he said there were similar boats he had images of who were on the Indus. And he said, and there you see why they don't need boats anymore, because they have a bridge as well. And now the boats are used for sand mining, as always. And to Dvapayana. In Sanskrit, Dvapayana means literally that which is surrounded by water. According to the sacred text, the Purana, the sage Parashar reaches Kalindi, which is the Yamuna, in the river north of India and wishes to cross it. He looks around and finds a fisherman's boat. Parashar asks Satyavati, the fisherman's daughter, who is on the boat at the time, to take him across the river, since her father is occupied elsewhere. Satyavati agrees. While on the boat, the sage cannot take his eye off the young woman and asks if he could make love to her. She agrees to his request and they conceive a child on the boat. Legend has it that the heavens help the couple bring down the clouds to give them privacy, as some of the miniatures also show. Later, the male child is born on the island on the Yamuna, is named Krishna Dvapayan Vyas, the dark one from the island, or Ved Vyas, as he later comes to be known. Ved Vyas is believed to have compiled the 4 Vedas and the Mahabharata epic. The Dvapayana also features as a lake in the last episode of the Great War in the Mahabharata. The instigator of the war, King Duryodhana, takes refuge in this lake, which in turn covers him in ice. This eases the king's fatigue and sense of loss and wrongdoing. The epic narrates that he can emerge from Dvapayana only by his own volition. No one can force him out of the icy waters. In the Mahabharata, King Dvapayana hides within this lake, which is also the creator, because the creator is also Krishna Dvapayan Vyas by the same name, author, creator, artist himself. Thus, Dvapayana becomes the mythical lake from which we may all be and from which we may all derive ourselves. Looking for lost water, I perform at locations named after or for water within the home city of Delhi. Old wells, step wells, some old water bodies like old have been covered over to make way for roads or for ease of traffic. Some remain only in the consciousness and the public memory of the older generation, referring to water body lost to time or to greed. My body here plays an indexical role of perhaps wanting or attempting to connect to the labyrinths of water tables, sources which keep or have kept the city alive. The sites are places which still carry names of old water bodies of Delhi, like the Chaparwala Khu or the Thatched Well in Karol Bagh, crossing which was covered over nearly in 1980s, the Panchkunya Road, the road with 5 wells, the Khari Bauli, the brackish well, step well, the Janta Pyao, the oldest well in Old Delhi, which is the people's water spigots, right in the middle of the road of the Old Delhi railway station. A lot of locations from Old Delhi are now covered over and are not functional because of the metro underneath, because the aquifer is disconnected from. The abstracted silhouette body, perhaps a dehumanizing shape, and at other times a head in supplication, may be a metaphor for defeat, submission, confessing. A head so bowed down that it may almost be admitting guilt. Defeat and guilt remain a recurrent theme in my work through the tropes of water that I employ to engage with sites where I work or sites where I seek out. Maybe the work is giving yourself, submitting to the forgotten river, lake, canal, well, or to the water underneath. This is Old Delhi, Lal Kuan. This is on the edge of this is Najafgarh, on the edge with Haryana. This is Khari Bauli in Old Delhi. This is Panchkuiya Road. This is how it was displayed. And this is from the Paina, objects that I collected on the river. And on the Paina is exhibited still at the Lightbox Gallery at the Howard Art Museums. It's a video work. Kindly, if you have time, please go and see it. False Cloud and Real Deluges. This is an ongoing project which started in 21st of June 22nd and is ongoing till next year 24, is traversing the 28th North Parallel in India, supported by World Weather Network and Khoj International Artists Association, which is an independent artist initiative. And this work came about as the 20th parallel. If you see Delhi, 28th parallel traverses Rajasthan on the west and also reaches up to the Mount Everest. Is also on the 28th north parallel. So it's a very geographical and climatic conditions, right from Rajasthan, which is a semi-arid area, as a desert, to Mount Everest, and then finally it just enters Arunachal Pradesh in the far east on a town called Tezu. I take off from Osip Maldestam's text on the stone. A stone is a diary of the weather. Like a meteorological concentrate, a stone is nothing but weather itself. In order to understand this, you must imagine that all geological changes and displacements can be resolved completely into elements of weather. In this sense, meteorology is more fundamental than mineralogy, which it embraces, washes over, ages, and to which it gives meaning. A stone is an impressionistic diary of weather, accumulated by millions of years of disasters, not only of the past, but also of the future, for it contains periodicity. This will result in it has to result in a show which opens next month at the Vadera Art Gallery in Delhi. I only can show you some things which are there. The rest of the things are I can give you a sneak peek. This is part of the work called 42 Weathers, which is going to be exhibited as prints of which I collected on the locations I showed you on the map. And of this is a part installation of recycled wood and ceramic plates, and obviously the stones that I've collected as an installation, and clouds printed on cotton as fabric on the pricing. So I'm not going to show more. This is images from the thing, and this is false clouds this is in Rajasthan as well. Interestingly, while doing on 21st June 2022, I was in Rajasthan at Ranjitpura, on almost just about 20 kilometers inside the Pakistan border, and it rained. And this year again, after the Biparjoy cyclone, which came into the Arabian Sea and landed at Gujarat, and then went inroads where it flooded Barmer, and we had extreme storms and rain in Bikaner again within that week of 20th to the 27th of June. These are supposed to be the hottest and the driest months in the desert. It is changing how weather is changing. It's like surprising because these two states have been awarded as almost 200% more rainfall than usual, and the states of Bihar, Jharkhand, and Uttar Pradesh, which are in central and north central, northeast India, have remained dry, which remains the major agricultural area of India. So even if the climate is changing so drastically that, like I said earlier as well, with the flash floods in Delhi, the glacial lake in Sikkim bursting and inundating most of Sikkim, and also the Yamuna crossing the danger mark thrice within 1 year. And all of these things are very, very indicative of the times that are going to come. Have you seen the river? This is also going to be a work there. And this I've titled all those, I think, the weather these days. It can infer a lot of things back home. If the river runs in me, then where is the sea? I come to a work called Chabil. It was a part of the 48 degrees centigrade public art project in 2008, where I got a kiosk made in the form of the small bottle that you bring back holy water from. This was done at Kashmiri Gate, one of the 8 gates of old Delhi. And it says, please leave your glasses, cups at the counter when you finish drinking. It was just offering free drinking water. And there were the cups lined up inside. It's a public art project within the archaeological site of Kashmiri Gate. And it's me giving out water. And if you drank water, you would get a sticker, a bumper sticker which said, have you ever seen the Yamuna? Have you ever touched the Yamuna? And if we drink, right, if I drink from this bottle, usually we all waste some part of water. We don't finish the bottles. We don't finish the water in the glasses that we have. So what I would do was, if people left anything in it, I would put Yamuna sand, which is the sand from the river, which is just about 1 kilometer away. And it would actually originally would have been on the gates of Kashmiri Gate. Like this time, it reached back onto the gates when Delhi flooded this year, and add white cement. And if you drink, you would leave your DNA through your saliva into the water that you would leave. So all of these solidified concrete cups or sculptures that were formed would be monuments to the river. Then you had this text on these photographs of mine, which lined the metro station. And I took 3 stations before Kashmiri Gate metro station and 3 stations after Kashmiri Gate metro station, where I paid for the advertising space. And it was very interesting to do a public art project like this, because when you lined up, people didn't know, you lined up taking the metro, and the people saying, oh, it's the first time they're not asking us to buy or do anything. It was just a question. So, part of this success, so I'm quite happy that at least putting a question in the public domain actually really helped in kind of doing that. And these are the other images that were used. And you can see the metro station with the text in Hindi, which says, क्या आपने यमुना को कभी देखा है? क्या आपने यमुना को कभी छुआ है? With the image of Yamuna evening on the other side. And then there were these yellow signs in Hindi and in English, which went all around. I got arrested while doing this because, as you know, public art projects are usually very tough to get permission to do. This is another thing of the so-called public spaces. Who owns that and who gives permission for that? Are they really public, and whose public do they actually address? So when I was doing it, I got arrested by the police. They said, you are not supposed to, deface public property. They said, what are you selling? I said, I'm not selling anything. And then he looked at it, oh, you just have a question. It's for Yamuna ji. Chalo, karo. Right? So they said, Right. So I was let off, right? And we had these things all over. And in the evening, I wanted this project to live. This was my first public art project. And I wanted the work to live day and night. And in the evening, I projected the Yamuna Walk, the book at the 5-day project that I had when I attempted to walk along the banks of the Yamuna from where it geographically enters Delhi from Palla village to where it geographically leaves Delhi at Okhla Barrage. So this whole 5-day walk was projected onto the kiosk, which right, and we had a lot of people, as you can see, walk in, and there was a spillover onto the monument. It was quite interesting to see all these images. So I think I'm good of taking too much time. Just to end with this, all water has perfect memory and is forever trying to get back to where it belongs. Toni Morrison. Thank you. Okay. Put this on. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Atul, for sharing your work. And okay.
Okay.
Or I'll sit here. Like that. Okay. Well, it was wonderful to see. I know there will be questions to ask from the audience. I'm sure there are a lot of questions, but since I'm at the table here, I get to ask first, right?
Yes.
I have the right to ask first. And I mean, it was so interesting to see all these projects actually in kind of in a nutshell, in a way, because we've been talking about them, and then to see them together is quite striking, actually. And I wonder, because I mean, how we did talk about sort of religion, bhakti, and your practice in a way. And you at some point, because this work in the Water Stories exhibition is the one that he did not show today, and that's the one he's submerging himself in the Yamuna River. And it's a series of 14 photographs, and there's a very strong kind of spiritual, religious connotation, invocation. But I think at some point, especially at the beginning, when you're interviewed or you talk about that work as you did not make that work with any religious connotation, right? So that's where I kind of wanted to ask you again about sort of that, it still really invokes this religion and or spirituality, because submerging in water is not just a Hindu thing. It's not. It's kind of universal in a way in world religion, and seeing this diversity of body of work that you have presented today to us, I'm kind of finding there are things that are more connotation-wise more sort of religious, spiritual. And I kind of obviously relate to maybe Hindu traditions. But then things like the looking for the lost river, for instance, that's where I think you're kind of departing from it. I didn't quite sort of see that really obvious connection to mythology, let's say, or mythology. And I found it quite powerful that you talk about sort of mythology and kind of reactivating mythology for thinking and raising awareness from people's relationship with water in a way. So I wonder, I guess the question might be, what I'm trying to ask you in a way is sort of, tell us more about sort of your artistic strategies, how you actually come up with these things that been different. I know it's like a rambling question, sorry.
Okay. I deliberately didn't show I was not waving but drowning, because all those who are curious can actually go see the exhibition.
Yes, please go see it.
And it has me immersing like I mentioned, immersing myself at the same Jagatpur village, which is the village just next to Wazirabad Barrage, where I also put the boat to water. And it has a set of 14 prints of which I immerse myself. And the last one is just a little ball of my head. You can't see my eyes. There's no eyes, anything else, ears, anything. It's just kind of totally immersed. And that's the work that Gina is referring to. And it came out of a gestation period of about 4 years. And during the 4 years, I was, like I said earlier when we were talking, it was about coming to terms with who I am as an artist and where I am as an artist, and how does the Yamuna inform me, and how does my own being brought up as a Hindu, a non-practicing Hindu, inform me. So in the process, I had kind of visited Gangotri, Yamunotri, which are the sources of the river. And just like, usually everybody does, you also collect holy water. I did. I still have it. This was done almost 2003 or 4 when I was doing it. And while on this journey, you come across, you cross Haridwar, Rishikesh, auspicious Devprayag, all these places where people immerse themselves in the river, they pray to the river, etc., etc. And then they bathe in it. You drink the same water. You go to the mandir, you have the Chanamrit, you drink the holy water, etc. But when you sit on the restaurant next, like this is not necessarily, there's also a certain class of people who sit at a restaurant and order bottled water. So what got me interested was that how do we conceptualize this in our heads? That we drink, we bathe, everything else goes on in this so-called democratic way of immersing ourselves, even though ghats may be different for different castes, but still the water kind of, but then when we come out, we want bottled water. So how do we conceptualize this in our heads culturally? So that was one of the reasons. And then it had me, read a bit, involve myself, and how to kind of, what I was going through as an artist, as a person, and as an individual, how to kind of put it across in work and through visual art. But one can easily become didactic and kind of, put a one-liner right through. But the work, like I said, I was talking to Gina, after 18 years, is still alive, it still says something. And I hope, I think it'll continue to say something. So that was the reasons. And mythology, again, while using the boat, if one connects to Indra's boat, or Noah's boat, right, we can also connect to a lot of other possible inundations that may happen, which are very, very imminent as far as I think. And mythology played a very important role right through engaging with these things, and especially the Mahabharata. And I also did another work in which addresses not only the Vipina, where I'm almost headless at these various locations. And this work specifically is at not even though the myth may be Hindu or myth may be but it transcends, the locations themselves transcend how it engages at sites, because there is the Khari Bauli, which is just outside the Fatehpuri Mosque in Old Delhi. And there is the Janta Pyao, and then there is the other mosques and the Pyaos which are in Old Delhi, which Muslims will frequent, which Christians will also frequent, and Hindus will frequent. There are also Pyaos which only Muslims will frequent, right? Separate drinking waters have been a tradition, even pre-partition. It is not something new, right? So all of these things so I wanted to kind of use the larger meaning of mythology to kind of engage with this kind of water sharing. And because especially I'm also a trained rainwater harvester. And when I started doing it, then people said, no, I'm harvesting this for my land. You never harvest water for a particular piece of land. You don't know where the aquifer will lead to. You don't know where the water will go underneath once you put it on underground. It is generally for everybody's well-being that you rainwater harvest. So this whole notions are also part of kind of engaging with that thing. But the Mahabharata comes in particularly in the episode where they are in exile, the princes, 5 princes, the Pandavas, and they reach a body of water, and the younger princes be younger princes. The voice that from the water body says, "Before you drink, answer my questions." And the younger princes, being younger princes, drink and they die. The eldest prince, who would be king, Yudhishthira, says, "Examine me." So why is he being examined by a body of water? Why should the questions, even though in the recent Gita press, Mahabharat, Sankshipt Mahabharat, the questions are said to be coming from a yaksha, but in the form of a water body. So all those questions that are there, what is swifter than the wind? I take the question from Peter Brook's Mahabharat. What is what is swifter than the wind? He says thought. What can cover the earth? He says darkness. So I had reformulated the questions for what the rivers might be saying. This is for a project of Delhi and Hamburg, Yamuna Elbe project, which was done in 2011, also on the Yamuna. And I changed it to what can cover the earth would be water, right, today. So mythology plays a very important part into kind of getting the time across. Incidentally, that work also had bumper stickers that you would take away, which had the text saying, what is my space, what is my poison, and what is my opposite, just like the one we said, have you ever seen the Yamuna? Have you ever touched the Yamuna?
Well, thank you. If I may follow up, actually, I don't think you sort of went into it this presentation, but from the presentation on Friday, I sort of got a sense that growing up as non-practicing Hindu and then sort of going to America to study, and then coming back and sort of in a way you mentioned how Mahabharata that you're using is actually Peter Brook's translation rather than kind of what you would have entertained as a child from Granny, let's say. So I wonder if you can kind of talk a little bit about that transition.
No, see, growing up in almost a secular home, because my father, being left-leaning at that time, member of the Communist Party, etc., all intellects was a member of the Communist Party at that time, right, in Delhi, right? And also coming from a home which was an Arya Samaj background, which, as it is, does not believe in idol worship even today. But even though it follows the same rituals almost, but coming from that kind of thing, but we were non-practicing. Nobody forced us. No one, and Granny did give us a number of stories from the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, and that was part of the thing. But then, why I chose Peter Brook's Mahabharata, it kind of distills it for my own self and also for others. So that was the reason. But this upbringing played a huge part in kind of engaging at a level where the work can transcend religion. Yeah. The other work important here is also where I tonsure myself on the Yamuna. It is called not Water Blood. There was another work, Death, the River and Me, in which there's a series of 63 images of me getting tonsured with the background, the river, and you only see the barber's hands on my neck and hair. So I get completely, I remove all my hair from my head, just like anybody would do in a death ritual, which was usually there. But there are, again, no religious markings. One assumes that the custom of their doing this is a religious custom, but there are no religious markings. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, let's see, what time is it? Well, if I shouldn't hog the questions, so maybe I'll open it up to the audience to.
And I have a microphone, so if anyone wants it, just raise your hand.
while you formulate the questions, maybe I'll ask another one.
Yes. Please do. Yeah.
No, I mean how you're sort of always implicating yourself in the work. Like, as starting with that, I was waving, but not drowning, to, looking for the lost river, and all these work that you sort of put yourself in action, and sort of can explain to us more about that decision.
Yeah, those decisions came up also while the 4 year of gestation, when it was also about engaging with photography again. I was not waving but drowning, and also being very conscious that the camera is an instrument of you become a voyeur, right? And there's a certain violence within the camera itself of photographing other people, and even more so now, the whole notion, I don't think you could shoot half the images that were shot 15 years ago today without consent. Like, we all know that, right? So I wanted to put myself into my own work, and why shoot somebody else? So I just moved that around. Also, the question of implicating oneself, I think most artists, at least within South Asia, do not implicate themselves in whatever work they do. Most artists take a very high ground, and usually the work engages and the blame is put always on somebody else, as if the artists themselves were outside of society and above what goes on around us. I'm very much part of where I live, and very much part of I partake in Delhi being one of the most polluted cities of the world, and I refuse to have an air purifier in my room, right? But the thing is that that's what Delhi is, right? So, and I'm responsible somewhere or the other in making Yamuna the most polluted river. So I think artists implicating themselves is an important way, and I definitely engage there. And I think it's an important part of being, rather than taking a didactic position of making a one-liner about environment or climate crisis or anything else. I think somewhere we have to implicate ourselves in our own work. I think that's very important.
Thank you. I think there is a question.
Hi, is it on? My name is Claudia. Thank you for this very excellent and inspiring talk. I was just wondering, in many of your projects, I see a melancholic mood and grief over water loss and polluted rivers coming across quite prominently in many of your projects. For example, in this Looking for Lost Waters. And also, just as a side note, as you mentioned in the very beginning, that rivers are also like sites of grief traditionally because of the cremation grounds and so on. So I was just wondering, because I'm interested in the topic, if you want to say a little bit more on grief over environmental loss and damage as you engage it in your own work. And also maybe, if you want, about contemporary South Asian artists, how they engage grief and melancholia over like past, present, and maybe also future losses. Would be nice. Thank you.
I'd rather not comment on other contemporary artists, but definitely there are a number of artists who are working, and it's important that we have more artists working and implicating themselves within their work and into how we in India are facing the crisis of having 39 of the 50 most polluted cities in the world and the polluted rivers. Yes, melancholia, grief, death play an important part, and a number of people also have pointed out of this self-inflicted violence that I do, whether it's I was not waving but drowning, how it one drowns oneself, or one drowns oneself, and also the work called Looking for Lost Water to the Vapayana, where I'm my head almost in supplication and in grief and in guilt. And I think that's an important thing that runs through my work. I don't know how to. I don't know where I'm answering your question of why it is there, but I think it is just the way I am, in the sense of sometimes there is nothing to be happy about, to be very honest. Especially, and like I said in an earlier conversation we had, that I may be sounding very pessimistic when I also say, if you look at the questions that come from the Mahabharatas, the thing of what can cover the earth, eventually water will cover the earth. And if sometimes I just think it's being stupid to be, not that we're not supposed to do anything, but to be falsely hopeful is also bringing death upon yourself. And this also comes from the, initially Gina had mentioned the notion of bhakti, that had come up initially in the conversation on the panel of, because the conversation came up with respect to Vrindavan and how we revere the rivers as goddesses, and we expect them to clean themselves up. Right? And this notion, for me, comes up with the notion of bhakti, that the gods will do whatever they can and they will always bail us out. So it's kind of a very nonsensical way of looking at life, of always being bailed out by the god, whereas you don't want to work towards it. And the same thing is that we in South Asia also, like the whole thing, I mean, the first world has its blame and its role to play in climate change, in the US as well, and the first world itself. But where we are, developing nations or India is still about 50% is like, extreme poverty. But we are to blame ourselves as well. We have to also act somewhere to do something at our own levels. And I think plenty can be done. I'm not saying no, it's not being done. It is being done. Things are changing. One is the legislation of Ganga and Yamuna being treated as persons since 2013-14. But then they're treating only 2 rivers as persons, not all the other rivers. Right. So that's where we are. You kind of wonder, why not every river to be treated as a person and having rights as a person, and a river to have a right to flow. That's what the legislation was about, right? Because like when I did the work, the water flow from Wazirabad was nil. The Yamuna would not flow. That's why the boat went in circles, because the water would also just stay there. It would just come in and just kind of move about, right? But now we have some flow, because the river has to be called a river only if it flows, but then only 2 rivers. Why not the other rivers in the country? So, that's why I think also to leave people with questions, one has to engage with a certain, it's not a strategy that per se that I want to do that. It has become a strategy in my work, while others pointing it out that, okay, you're dealing with death too much, you're dealing with the morbid too much, you're implicating yourself, but you expect others to, agree with you, right? You know what I mean? It's one of those things that you do. But I think that's the way I am, and I don't know. I don't know whether I answered your question or not, but okay. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, that was great. Yeah.
I think there were the questions there.
Thanks, Atul. What a great talk. I had a question about one of the works that you showed us, which was the work where you asked people to take sips from this cup of water and then concretize the cups in some ways. And I'm just thinking, how did that work culminate for you? What happened to the end products? Did you display them? Thinking here a little bit about the relationships between bodies and water, which seem to be so central in your work.
The end product is still in my studio. Sometimes public art projects or art projects don't go anywhere but land up as the paraphernalia that adds to your studio. Right. It's still in my studio. And I have these number of thousands of these small and large concrete or sand and cement DNA cast within that. But it was a very satisfying experience because that was my first public art project, and to get people to engage, drink, and then the school children locally got to know that their water, their saliva contained in the water, would become a monument. So they would come every 1 or 2 at 1 o'clock after the school got over, and 10-15 of them would drink from that and deliberately leave, because because nowhere did it say that you had to leave. You just got a bumper sticker and then you could drink water and leave. But if you left something, because then they got to know that they could add to the monument every day. So they started doing that. And then I got a lot of people there who said, okay, I've been in the city for 15 years. I've never seen the river. I've been in the city for 7 years. I've never seen the river. I've seen the river, but I've never touched the river. So it became a thing. And then these bumper stickers that I had, I found it after 3 years at chai shops, on DTC buses, on 3-wheelers. Continuously after 3-4 years, I would see them at some place or the other, right? And then later at somebody's party, somebody's foyer, they were there, the objects on the foyer, very fancy stuff. And my stickers they didn't know they were mine. They were just, they found them. So work travels. So that was very, very satisfying. I would love to exhibit the work again. And maybe because I never exhibited the monument itself, so it would be fun to kind of do that, and maybe also do it at different locations, because it's not only about the Yamuna, it's about water anywhere. Okay, how much of this do we finish every day? Okay.
Hello. Is it on? Okay. Mr. Bhalla, thank you so much for an insightful presentation. I'm really intrigued by your public art with the bumper stickers. Other than being arrested when you were installing the stickers, how was your experience? And how did you sort of carry out, how did you execute the project in that? Was it a 1-day thing? Was it a 1-hour thing? Or did you go every day? And what was your interaction with people?
No, it was a much larger project. We were allowed the whole structure that was there at Kashmiri Gate Archaeological Site, because Kashmiri Gate is with the ASI, Archaeological Survey of India. And initially the road would actually go through the Kashmiri Gates to the metro, the Kashmiri Gate metro station. Now they've kind of cordoned off the Kashmiri Gate monument itself. And now you kind of walk around it, so you actually don't go through it. So the guards at the archaeological site said, "Oh, thank God you're doing a project here. At least people are coming and seeing it." That's one. And then it started off much earlier because of me wanting to see. It was also recce of which people visit there, how many people sleep overnight in those areas, and in the pavements, etc. So I wanted to look at all of that, and some of them you do see in the images that I've shown. And also, it's just next to the interstate bus terminal, which is the northernmost, right? And so I knew there would be a lot of people there, but I didn't know all of them would actually come to my site, because that's why I thought I should use the roads across and the metro stations, to get people, because all the yellow signs, if you followed any of those signs, you would reach the site. So it was it was at least a month's project to kind of do it, and it remained at site for about 2 weeks. I was giving out water for 2 weeks. I was there every day. And the bumper stickers finished, and we had to get more printed because people wanted to take them, do something with them, everything. So it was a wonderful project. It was called 48 degrees, and there was supposed to be another one which was supposed to be called 50 degrees centigrade, but that never happened because, again, who wants to fund public art projects and who's going to give permissions? Because, I don't want to get into that because it's extremely difficult in any city around the world to get public art project permissions, right? Anyway, but it was a wonderful thing. I spent especially with the police, I was there because this was done at night. when I was giving, this was at 1 a.m. when I got arrested. So I was out there, putting all of these up, and then, okay, why are you defacing public property? So I know, and guerrilla art is one way to kind of do it when you don't get permissions to, do that. But the stickers, the bumper stickers also landed up on DTC buses, right? So I'm not saying I defaced public property, but I didn't tell people to deface public property, right? But somehow the other, one has to somewhere use the guerrilla tactics to kind of get the point across. But the work lived for quite a while, actually. That was enjoyable.
Well, so I have to report that actually on Saturday when we were doing a tour with the Harvard climate graduate student group from different schools around the Harvard campus, actually, one of the visitors, actually, she was from Delhi and she grew up, and she said in grade school she had these stickers. She did not know it was from him, and she's like, "Oh, that's from you." So it was really wonderful to actually hear that it was like afterlife of that project lived on. Anyways, I think there were a couple of questions. Yeah.
Hi, Atul. The presentation was quite intriguing. I'm again interested in the public art as a public project. However, not just art which is created as public art, but the entire process of the other art which you were creating. Like you were out there, right, when you were collecting stones or when you were clicking those pictures. Like I remember Khari Boli and all of these regions as very highly populated regions. And does the act of creating art itself sometimes raise certain questions or dialogues around in that area? And then not just the public art project, but also the process of creating art for a different audience become a part of the environmental movement then?
A good question. Thank you. I just want to bring here a project that I had done with conceptualized by Gigi Scaria. It was called Dilli Durast 2006. Out of which the work Pyaus had come up and my old Delhi. It was a project in which Gigi, me, Himanshu Desai and Mahmood Farooqi were part of. I'm being a resident of Delhi, not knowing old Delhi at the time, and Gigi Scaria being a Christian migrant to the city from Kerala, Himanshu Desai from Bombay and Mahmood Farooqi as well. So we all stayed in old Delhi for a month without going home. Like all our homes are in Delhi. And this was the only time within the contemporary art scene in India where the work was done in Old Delhi, executed in Old Delhi, and exhibited in Old Delhi. It did not go to a White Cube gallery after. So that is the problem. A lot of people are doing projects at number of sites, but then they get exhibited only in White Cubes. Right, so the Dilli Durast 2006 project, we exhibited at Al Noor Hotel on the terrace. We had the Delhi Art World glitterati come in rickshaws, climb those stairs up on the terrace. We had videos, we had images, we had a number of stuff there, and we had biryani, veg and non-veg. And we had Mahmood Farooqi doing his Gadastan Goi for the first time in Delhi. This was 2006. So there are things that can be done at site, provided that one as an artist has to be conscious. And if you're familiar with my work, the Mashq work, which is there, in which I actually do a halal, I learn how to do a halal from a Muslim butcher. The idea was to get a first water container made, which is a goat skin mashq, which is the goat skin thing. So I wanted to get it done from scratch. So I bought a goat. I learned how to do a halal. I got the skin done, and I got a leather bag done, and then finally made, and it was exhibited there. So the local people who came, whose restaurants we ate and drank at, and other thing, they all came in and they said, "Okay, you don't know how to hold the knife. You don't know how to do this. You're sitting in the wrong posture. How do you even do this?" So it added so much to the work. And then we exhibited the pyaus that they were familiar with. I exhibited the water pumps they were familiar with. I exhibited the mashq, a number of works that were there. So it became very important how the neighborhoods can look at their own selves and also be engaged in, okay, they would ask, okay, why were you interested in the piaus? So they were free and they could recognize one, okay, no, this one you shouldn't have shot because it's too dirty. You should have at least shot a clean one. So all those things added to the work. So the problem with the contemporary art scene back home is sometimes you exhibit only within the white cube. You do public art projects, but it's done didactically. You're never, you engage at a very superficial level. I'm sorry I'm saying these things, but that's how I feel.
Thank you, Professor Bhalla, for that, for sharing your artwork. I'm just a little curious to know, like, how did you get connected with water? Like, and how do you perceive, like, water is from your art point of view? And why did you choose that as a medium of representing your work? And what made you do that?
Well, see, I'm a former generation where we didn't have pumps. See, we have to realize that we still get 1 hour water in the morning in Delhi and 1 hour in the evening. There's no 24-hour supply. We have a notion of the 24-hour supply because we fill up water in the 1 hour that we have in the morning. I grew up at a time when there were no water pumps, or we could not afford a water pump as a family. And we used to leave the tap open at night. So when the water came at 6:30 or 6 o'clock, one would wake up with the water dripping in the bucket. And that's the most terrible way to wake up in the morning, right? So right? So that's how I would wake up. And you would have to finish your bathing, washing, drinking, part cooking, etc., and fill up for the rest of the day because you never knew you would get water in the evening. So that's how it was. And then that's how we started off, right? And then that's why, the other day we were talking of a bucket bath, right? Yeah. Where when you go to your hotel, that, what if you have no shower, or we never had showers back home. If you get 1 bucket to bathe, my sister would get 2 buckets because she had very long hair, right? Whenever she wanted to wash her hair. So this was part of life, and that's how we grew up. So why not water? That's one reason. The other reason is also because of me wanting to engage with the city. And then engaging at a city, okay, why the city? And I did the Yamuna walk, which is walking the length of the Yamuna along the banks. Took a 5-day walk, as the book says. And then you learn that the city was engaged with the river because all the Mughal buildings and even the British buildings faced the river. But now what we do is after 1954, right, that is after independence, all the buildings face the road. So literally we have our backsides toward the river. So and that's why nobody cleans it up. That's why you can't smell it. That's why, so unless we face it, we're not going to do anything. So it's also about urban planning. It's also about this, and also about, okay, we have a river running in the city, but nobody goes and sits by it. All over the world, we have rivers in cities. We have water bodies in cities. Yamuna has made Delhi, but then we have no connection with it. And we are very troubled when it floods. The rivers are meant to flood. How do you replenish groundwater? So, all those questions, that's how water came into being.
Just one last question, maybe? Yeah.
Well, this better be a good question then.
No pressure. No pressure, sir.
By the way, you were talking about how different religious cultural groups are also related to the river. And I'm always thinking in the Tarana-e-Hind, Lama Iqbal has that beautiful address to the Ganga, O Aberu de Ganga, O water of the flowing stream of the Ganges, do you remember the day when our caravan landed by your shores? But I was just, this not immersing yourself in the river. Have you seen the river? Artists not implicating themselves in their work. And I was wondering, just this monsoon, we had this ecstatic set of images and videos from Vrindavan when the river overflowed the banks and the water was literally waist deep, and you had devotees taking out processions with music and dance, ecstatic that the holy Yamuna had come to them and left her banks. It was this unbelievable immersion. And it's not something you see in Delhi. It's very weird. It's in Vrindavan, you still face the river. In Mathura, you still face the river, but in Delhi, you don't. And I'm wondering what that's about and if that's something that came up as you were doing your projects in Delhi. And in terms of artists implicating themselves and you talking about drowning in the Ganga, in the Jamuna, I wonder, do you think of presidents like Jagannath? You know, he wrote this beautiful 52 stanzas. The Rasa Gangadhara in the 17th century, Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb were patrons. And he's literally, according to the story, drowning himself. He goes down 52 steps, recites a stanza in each step, and at the last step, he takes extreme samadhi and drowns himself in the Ganga, which is the most, and he has his own name as a Bhanita, you know, in the classic bhakti fashion. So he's literally drowning himself in the Ganga, putting himself in his Ganga poem, you know, so implicating himself in the most absolute way. And I wonder if that kind of thing is a model for you at all.
I was not aware of this, to be very honest. But I mean, obviously, ancient poets have always been there. I mean, Tulsidas as well. Their relationship with the rivers have been are there, and a number of other poets and people. What I was mentioning was the contemporary artists, not specifically where I said that contemporary artists don't implicate themselves. So that's what I had meant. But thank you for bringing this up. And but the Ghats in Delhi is very, very unfortunate that we don't engage with the Ghats because you don't see them, because there's a wall. If you go to Delhi, there's a wall. You just see the steps going. You don't know what's behind the wall. Nobody goes. But it's actually the steps because the conditions of the Yamuna have changed so much that usually the Ghats would flood. And it's this 1978 flood that the water had crossed the Ghats and gone almost onto Rajiv Chowk, Connaught Place, and central Delhi as well. And this happened this time as well. So nobody thinks of actually adding to the steps of the Ghats to make them higher. They just make a wall to hide them. It's again a question of, why don't you add more steps, which would also be a barrier for the river not crossing into residential areas, but it would add to the steps as well and engage at a different level, the Yamuna being accessible, etc., etc. So urban design, I think we are challenged there as well, especially in a number of places. But I get your point of this again, the question of bhakti, of Yamuna flooding and coming to them in Vrindavan, coming to them in Varanasi also at the Ganga, or coming to them. But they don't question when it doesn't come to them. They don't question the sewage pipe that it has to overflow beyond at Vrindavan, that it has to cross to come to them. So it can't cross the sewage pipe. The sewage pipe is a disaster of a design, right, at Vrindavan. So those things will have to also be, they are the same people who allowed the sewage pipe to come up, if I may say so. Yes, thank you.
Well, I think we had a very fruitful conversations today, and I think we can wrap it up here. And thank you so much, Atul, for entertaining all these questions and presenting. And thank you all for coming. And so Atul Bhalla will be engaged in a small seminar style, I guess, on Thursday for lunchtime seminars. And I think it's in this building as well. Yep. So do come again, and we will have more intimate conversation then. So have a good evening, everyone. Yes, and have lunch. Yes, the lunch and the talk.
Thank you all.
Yes. Thank you.
Everyone, that talk's going to be in room S354 on Thursday at noon. So stop on by.